one of the things I've been asked is how to create a PNG which has an alpha channel. Um, it's a pretty simple method once you know how, but it can be a little bit confusing, and it's something that you need if you're going to set up image planes. So for instance, I have a Maya file here which I'm aiming to create an image plane in, and I need to have something that I can see through, and I just want to have the line. So just want to have the black line on it. So if I go into Photoshop here, I've got my character which I've laid out, and he's on a separate layer, so the black lines are on a separate layer, and underneath, usually when you create a file, what you'll get is your background layer. Normally this is called background. I've just put it back in, which is why it was named slightly differently, but often you'll put all of your drawing lines on a separate layer which has transparency where you haven't drawn the lines, and normally you'll have a layer underneath it. To create a PNG is very, very simple. All I have to do is drag the background layer and over the trash can and just delete it. And what happens is it takes my layer which has the line in it and it merges it together with a transparent layer, so I get a transparency. And then what I can just do is save a copy, and I'm just going to save it as a PNG. I've already saved it here there, which is body front 2. Let's just save that. And then when I go into Maya, I can just create an image plane. So I can go to View, Image Plane, and Import Image, and then in there I've got my body image there. So I open that up, and there's my image plane, and it's movable. I'm going to put into my ref layers. I've created a layer here which I use for reference. If I'm going to just delete this for a second, and I'm just going to. All I've done with this is I just to create a layer, I just go to layers, create either empty layer if I don't have the thing that I want in the layer selected, or if I've got it selected like I have here, I can just go to layer, create layer from selected, and this is my layer here, and I know that I've got the right object in it because when I click on V for visibility and turn it on and off, this disappears. But I can also use it for a couple of other things as well. If I click on R, then it changes to a reference layer, and that means I can't select it, and this is really handy if I then start off with a cube here and say I want to select this cube. If I don't have this, if I just add this object here, which is my cube, I'm just going to add it to my build layer which I created earlier. So add selected objects. I'm just going to add this to the build layer. I just created this layer just the same as I did with this reference layer. I just called it build. I can change the layer name by clicking on it, and just select that. I'm just going to call that ref and save. So it means that I've got my image plane in my reference layer, so I can turn that on and off by clicking on the V, and in my build layer I've got this object, so that should now disappear when I click the V there. Now if I put it onto T, it just shows the binding box, or just shows the wireframe of it, and I can't select it, but I just need it to be a normal layer. I just don't want any letters in there at all, because it's my build layer, this is my active layer that I'm going to be editing in, and then this is my reference layer, which just has the image plane in it. So now what I can do is I've got my front camera set up. I'm going to set up a side camera, and again just going to go to View, Image Plane, Import Image, and I'm just going to go to side, or poly side, and open that one, and that's my side view there. And that should, it's not been assigned to any layer so far, so if I just turn on 6, you'll see the cube appear. That's not been assigned to any particular layer at the moment, so I'm going to right click and add selected objects. Now when I turn this on and off, it should disappear. Now if I go to the perspective view, I can then make these I'm just going to line these up, so I'm just going to make them sort of movable. I'm just going to make sure everything lines up. Now, one of the really handy things is that I've created this in Photoshop, and I made sure that I had lines that made everything the same height, and so that everything lined up. And it meant that when I separate these out into their individual PNGs, their sizes were the same. So when they come into into Maya, these image files will line up and be the same size. So you can see the head there touches exactly at the top, and the feet line up. If I run the knees past each other, the knees line up as well. So it's just a handy method of working. So what I want to do is just make sure that this is in the right plane. So currently I've got the box in front of it, and I want to just have the plane in front. So I'm moving this backwards and forwards just to pop it in front of this box, because I want it to be in front of what I'm doing. Otherwise, when I'm modeling, it means that whatever I'm modeling will obscure my view of this particular image plane. And the same thing with this image plane here. So I want this to be in front there, so I'm just going to move that there. So now I've created my image planes of my guy, the front view and the side view. Now the other thing I've got to do is I'll just go back here, and I've created a T-pose here. So this is roughly what he'll look like when his arms are sticking out, and this is going to be handy for when I eventually come to rig it. So I'll normally put it in a T-pose. The hands aren't exactly at the right angle, but I've already built the hands. They were a little bit complicated, so I'm not really fussed about the angle here. I just wanted to gauge what it would look like when the arms are in a T-pose. So I have created a T-pose image for it here, but for these purposes, most of the time his arms are going to be down by his sides. So this is why initially I'll model it with his arms down by his sides here. And that's why I'm doing that. But that's pretty much how to create a PNG as a transparency, and to bring it in as an image plane. One last thing, you can edit these. If we're going to hypershade, they're under cameras. So yeah, image planes are under cameras. So if you're having difficulty finding them for one reason or another, just go to cameras. You've got your image planes, and they're set up that way. If you select them, what you'll find is you've got something called alpha gain, which you can edit in the hypershade. And it means that if I just go to this one here, I can then make it more transparent by shifting the alpha gain and make it more or less transparent there. So if it's getting in the way and it's getting kind of annoying, and if I just go here, if I'm finding that I'm modeling stuff and this is was more detailed and this was getting in the way, I can just change the alpha gain, and that will help out by making it semi-transparent. So just try that again. You see it should disappear on this left hand side, and now it will go back to full transparency. I'm going to set that about 50%. I'm going to take my other image plane, I'm going to set that to 50% as well. So that's setting up image planes in as PNGs based on a Photoshop file. Key success of this really is going to be making sure that if you do draw this initially, is making sure that everything's lining up properly. So particularly the front and side view, make sure that you're using lines in order to line all these elements up, like the top of the shoulders, the bottom of the torso, the top of the hips. All of these I've individually lined up so that when I'm building it in Maya, I don't get a mismatch that suddenly throws me off when I'm building it. And that covers everything.